This What's Working with Cam Marston podcast is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stellas. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
Welcome, everyone, to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is the show designed to bring you the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace trends that are shaping the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace around us. I try to find the guests that can talk about the trends in such a way that they'll say something that you and I can understand and immediately think of something we can do in our own workforce, in our own workplace, or in our own marketplace that'll make each of us a little bit better at whatever it is that we do. One of the things that I enjoy the most about this show is discovery. And by that, I mean discovering businesses and people and ideas, concepts, whatever it may be, that I hadn't been introduced to before. Discovery always gets my heart pounding, makes me excited. And one of the great parts of travel that I like so much is discovering new places and discovering new foods. I'm a big fan of discovery, always asking what's around the corner. One of the things that I enjoy most about discovery is finding something nearby that I hadn't known existed. And today we're going to focus on chocolate. Chef Jule runs Fairhope Chocolates over in Fairhope, Alabama, and she makes high-end gourmet chocolates. Now, I've always known chocolate exists. You and I had always known chocolate exists. My first job out of college was working for Nestle Brands food service company, and we used to sell these 8-pound Nestle Crunch bars, 8 pounds. And I would get them and buy them for myself and give them as gifts for Christmas, and the expressions that I would see on people's faces were priceless. I still remember those things and still remember the reactions as I gave them. Those big Nestle chocolate bars, Nestle Crunch chocolate bars. But what we're talking about today is high-end gourmet stuff. Stuff that you're not going to find wrapped in a Nestle wrapper, no offense, Nestle, at least not on the retail shelves, but a different level of chocolate. And frankly, I hadn't known much about it. And I thought as this idea kind of came to me, as it was introduced to me, I thought, well, this might be a perfect conversation to have leading up into Thanksgiving. Let's talk about some food stuff. And hey, this might be a discovery that I would enjoy. Everybody likes chocolate. I certainly like chocolate. Let's learn a little bit about it. One of my first experiences with a high-end chocolate happened, I'm guessing, about 10 years ago. I was given a speech in a small college campus just outside of Zurich, Switzerland. And as I came out of the presentation, it was a networking event, and I was talking to people, and this guy from the BBC came up and introduced himself. And he wanted to talk to me. He was in the event. And I thought, man, this is my ticket. I'm about to get interviewed by the BBC. This is international media. This is it. I'm out of here. I'm airborne at this point. This is going to be my ticket to the stars, whatever it may be. So I'm talking to this guy, and they're passing hors d'oeuvres. This guy comes by with a tray full of chocolates. And I absentmindedly stopped him and was very polite and grabbed one of the chocolates. It was a little turtle. And I remember this. And the turtle had little legs on it. And I looked at it and thought, how cute. And I'm trying to pay attention to this BBC guy. And I tossed it in my mouth and started chewing. And it was at that moment that I realized that the legs and the shell, the kind of what was holding up the shell, the legs and the base weren't edible. They were plastic. And I remember thinking as I'm chewing this plastic piece in front of this BBC guy, what do I do now? At this point, I'd completely lost focus on what he and I were talking about. And I'm thinking, do I swallow this plastic thing? I mean, it's as big as the palm of my hand. I'm trying to chew it. Do I swallow it? Do I spit it out? I ultimately spit it out, and I've never heard from the BBC again. I'm sure that guy watched me throw that plastic thing with the chocolate on top of it into my mouth and thought, done with this guy. Today, I'm going to get a formal education in chocolate. We're going to taste it along the way. Chef Jule's patient with me. We're going to taste some beautiful chocolate led by Chef Jule, a perfect lead up for our Thanksgiving holidays next week. You're going to enjoy this. This is going to be tasty. We'll be right back.
Think about your home. What do you see? Do you just see 2 stories or the stories of your toddler's first steps? Now think about your car. Do you see an odometer reading or your kids reading in the back seat? Other insurance companies just see a house. They just see a car. But a State Farm agent sees what your home and your car really mean to you. So why not give them the protection they deserve?
You can reach me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, at AllisonHorner.com.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. I'm in the studio today with Chef Jule, Julianne Roach. She's the owner and executive chef of Fairhope Chocolates, a high-end gourmet chocolate store right in our midst. Her background includes a little bit of San Francisco, a little bit of the University of Virginia, and today it includes Fairhope, Alabama. We're going to get the whole story and taste some chocolate. I'll describe to you what I'm looking at in a moment. Chef Jule, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and share my chocolate adventure with you. It's been a sweet journey. I know that's very punny, but it's actually very true.
Well, the number of samples that you've brought today, and let's face it, I'm not opposed to any of this. The number of samples you brought is just overwhelming. If you can picture this, folks, think about a black tablecloth with a white piece of paper laid out in front of it with, I'm guessing, what is a dozen, if not more, different types of confections, chocolate confections, which range in color from a butter yellow color to a rich, dark, nearly black chocolate to something that appears to be in the purple red range, which we'll learn about in a little while. But first, let's begin with you, Chef. Your story that got you from San Francisco to UVA and perhaps some stops in between and led you to Fairhope. If you would, give us an overview. This is already interesting to me.
Well, thank you so much. I was born in San Francisco and had the pleasure of living in many different environments and countries as I grew up. My father worked for USAID, which took us to Central America. We spent a significant amount of time in Panama and Nicaragua. We traveled all through Central America. I remember the Pan Am highway had been built, and my father threw us in the back of the Ford Galaxy. The back seat looked like a couch. There were no seat belts. And my father said, we're going to drive from the border of Colombia and Panama to San Francisco, and we hit every country along the way. Later in life, we did spend some time in Ethiopia, and I was a foreign exchange student in Japan as well. Please don't ask me to speak any Japanese. I got fairly proficient, but it is just gone. And at that time, when we moved back to the States, we were lucky enough to get to move to D.C. I went through school in the D.C. suburbs and then went to University of Virginia for my college education and for my master's degree. And I worked in health promotion. A lot of people say to me, well, you're kind of doing the opposite. I did diabetes education. I did a lot of smoking cessation. I worked a lot with health and diet. And actually, I think that these are very closely related because what I found is that deprivation does not work. I love sugar. I love sweets. I love chocolate. And what I discovered is that you will help people more from exposing them to extremely high quality product in smaller amounts. And that's where I ended up. After Virginia, we moved here to Fairhope. My husband got a job offer here. And as soon as my children reached a certain age where they were more independent, I started going to culinary school. fell in love with it, went to the Gulf Shores Culinary Arts Institute, part of Coastal Alabama. I did pastry. I did culinary, finished both of those, and I did about 3/4 of my hospitality as well. When I got out of that, I was offered this incredible opportunity to sell Newhouse of Belgium.
Now let's pause there. I don't want to diminish your story. I want to hear it all, but Newhouse of Belgium is I'm trying to equate it, is the Macallan of Scotch. There's another former guest of mine. Tell me a little bit about it and why it's so rare and distinct and so unique that you have the opportunity to sell it.
I had a friend who is French, and he knew some of the higher ups at Newhouse and was able to help me in getting my license for this. There are very few independent shops in the United States. Why Newhouse? It's my favorite chocolate. It is a Belgian chocolate. They have been around since 1857. Jean Newhouse and his wife Louise, they were pharmacists, and you can go to their original shop today off the Palais Royal in Brussels. And they realized that people did not like the taste of their medicine. So Jean came up with the idea, what if I put it inside of a chocolate? So he originally made the chocolates in the early 1900s to be a vehicle for dispensing his medicine.
Really?
People still didn't like his medicine, but they loved his chocolate.
They loved his chocolate, I'm sure.
Yes.
And he realized he was on to something.
Yes, he realized he was on to something. So he stopped being a pharmacist and he became a chocolatier. And they just set the gold standard at that time. During that time, you also saw the beginnings of, in the United States, like Nestle's and Hershey's, very different companies than what they are today. We're small, more artisanal companies. You also saw companies like Cadbury in England. So right in the early 1900s, you're seeing all these companies through about the 1940s starting to come along and producing chocolate. And of course, chocolate came from the New World. It was taken over, 1600s, a lot like the spice trade, coffee trade, tea trade. Chocolate came in there. And around 1750, 1800s, you started to see chocolate houses popping up all over Europe. It was originally a drink, then it became a bar, and then probably in the early 1900s-ish, you start seeing a bonbon. A bonbon is simply a high-end chocolate piece.
Let's go back to your background real quick. And these travels up and down Central America, this time in Ethiopia, I'm trying to determine if that led to your fascination with chocolate. These are all volcanic soils. These are all places where the cacao bean would grow naturally or perhaps better. Was there any part of your youth that led to your interest in chocolate?
Yes and no. I don't remember as a child being exposed to specialty chocolates, except when my grandmother would come from San Francisco and bring me See's candies, which I loved a good box of nuts and chews growing up. See's Candy is a very respectable candy company, delicious chocolates. And I remembered that. I always enjoyed that. Always wanted a box of See's for my birthday or for Christmas or if somebody came from the States visiting us. However, the influence would be that I was expected to eat everything put on my plate.
Yeah.
And I was exposed to chili peppers and spices and weird meats. And, you'd go out into the countryside. And if it was coastal, you might be given shark for lunch. So I was eating foods at a very early age that most kids would never dream of trying. Also, I was raised without junk food, which is we just didn't have it. And so it was a real treat. I've always loved food. And I think those early experiences were that there's no making another meal. There's no going, you couldn't be picky.
Yeah.
You ate what you were served, and all of the weird spices and all of the strange combinations. I think that had a huge impact on me and my willingness to eat different foods.
So it was at some point, and speaking of eat different foods, we've got this, like I said, charcuterie board full of chocolate. Let's try something right now.
Sure.
I assume you brought this to be consumed and
Absolutely.
not just to look at.
Absolutely.
Because my shirt is wet from the drool. Pick something out. Tell me what it is, and then I've got another question for you.
Okay, we're going to do something really quick. This won't take long, but when you do a tasting of chocolate, you normally start with like the white chocolates. And what I want you to do is I'm going to give you a little rondo. This is Swiss. This is a Swiss chocolate, and you're going to put it in your mouth, and you're going to, I want you to chew it. I want you to let it melt, and I want you to tell me, clear your brain and tell me what you taste.
Oh boy, I'm not real good at picking out tastes. It's good. I could eat 1,000 of them. Am I tasting a buttery taste in there?
Sure, absolutely, because it's very rich in cocoa butter.
Yeah.
Yeah. You might be picking up some vanilla flavors, too.
I love vanilla. Yeah. Definitely vanilla. See, my palate is one, when you point out the flavors, I can find them. But
Sure.
my palate is not one where I can identify the flavors and tell you what it is.
So now I'm going to give you a current trend. This is maybe a fad, maybe a trend, hard to say. I think it's a trend. I think this will be here to say. This is ruby chocolate.
Ruby chocolate.
And I want you to let that kind of chew it, let it melt. The chewing process stimulates the salivary glands, which you also want to make sure you coat your mouth with fat, because that's a vehicle for the flavor in chocolate.
Mm-hmm. Ruby chocolate. Now, why is it called ruby chocolate? I know the color would have something to do with it.
Yes, it is just the color. This is how it is rendered from the bean. Mm-hmm. This is not an added color. And I'd like to point out, is there anything in particular you're getting from this?
Oh, you're testing me in a pass-fail environment, and I'm afraid that, again, my palate is not one that I have a lot of confidence in. Tell me what I'm experiencing, and I can confirm it or not confirm it.
How about some fruit?
Yes.
Yeah, berries, perhaps?
Yeah, I taste the berries.
Okay. So what I wanted to point out, kind of juxtaposing the white versus the ruby, is to point out that this came from the earth. This came from the terroir of the chocolate.
Yeah.
So this is that berry flavor you got actually came from the earth where it was grown. And this is kind of a trend we're seeing right now.
Is that the chocolate you can identify the earth tastes. You can identify where it was grown based on the taste of the chocolate that comes through the cacao bean, very similar to a wine.
Yes.
And the trend is a ruby chocolate that has a little of a berry hint in it, is what we're identifying right now.
And that was not added. Like some people think, oh, you've added strawberry flavoring or you've added a red berry to this. And no, we did not. That came from the earth. So I'm going to give you one more here. This is a milk chocolate. Ooh, these are rondos. These are little. This is a very good chocolate. It's called couverture. Couverture chocolate, for our definition, we're going to say it is above 33% total chocolate in the product and above.
Oh, my Lord.
Now, you might be getting you're definitely going to get some sweetness, some milk. But what I want you to taste in this, everyone is different, so you may not taste it. This isn't a shame thing. You might get something totally different based on your genetics and your environment and your experiences. But this should have a caramel, a little burnty caramel, a little bit of malt. Sweetness, milk. And again, that is where the chocolate is from, how it was processed.
Let's take a break. I need to mop my forehead. This has been very good. And we'll keep going with this. Let's give our advertisers a chance to get in here. You're listening to What's Working. I'm with Chef Jule. She's the owner and executive chef of Fairhope Chocolate. She's telling me her story, and we're tasting as we go along as we prepare for Thanksgiving. We'll be right back. This is Cam Marston, and I'm on the phone with Cajun Mike of E3 Termite and Pest Control. Cajun Mike, I was told by many termite companies they're not going to touch a house with spray foam insulation. Then I found you, and you bond the homes that you treat. Tell me how you do this and what your treatment does to the termites.
Basically, I put together an extensive treatment program that allows us to treat homes and allows us to actually treat spray foam with a product that will absorb into the spray foam and protect it from termites harboring in the area or starting an above ground colony. We also, like I say, with our extensive treatment, we put it together and we're able to bond houses just simply by the way we treat it.
It's hard to find a termite company that'll touch a house with spray foam. I know I use you and love it. Tell people how they can find you, Cajun Mike.
They can find me at e3pest.com.
That's the letter E, the number 3, pests.com. I'm sitting in the studio today with Chef Jule, the owner and executive chef of Fairhope Chocolate here in Fairhope, hearing her story. Now, Chef, you told me about Newhouse chocolates. Newhouse chocolates are a prepared final product, not a ingredient you're using in this cornucopia of chocolates that I see in front of me. Is that correct?
Yes. When I first opened my store and I had this incredible opportunity to carry these world-class chocolates, it is all that I offered. So I started off in 200 square feet. Literally 5 people could fit in the store at a time. And these are prepared bonbons. They're also called pralines. The term praline in the United States, particularly in the South, we use the term praline to mean the pecan sugar confection, right? Something that you might get in New Orleans, but it is also, we make them here. We make fabulous pralines, high quality ingredients, local nuts. But we started off with this. I just was so unsure how this high-end, expensive chocolate would be accepted into the community. So I started with a small line of the Newhouse. By the way, Newhouse is my pronunciation. You hear Neuhaus, you hear all sorts of variations of it's Neuhaus. And to the Germans out there, I'm sorry, the Germans who come in the shop pronounce it very differently. The French pronounce it differently. I am not French.
Hey, you're in Fairhope, Alabama.
Yes.
You sell it. There's no one else near you that sells it. You make the rules.
Yes. So Newhouse is what we call it here. And I am well aware that in different parts of the country, they call it differently. But it
back to the pralines
was a hit. So pralines are the American confection.
Right.
They came from France, but they're the Americanized pecan confection that you eat year-round or at Mardi Gras. Praline can mean simply a bonbon, or the traditional meaning for me and from what I've seen in Europe is a chocolate with a ground nut.
Okay, and which is help us understand why the pecan confection that we know today is called that.
Yes, and it's confusing for Southerners because, first of all, everybody says praline or praline, although we call it praline. And I was told when I first started making pralines that a praline, honey, is what you do when you've had too much Mardi Gras. You pray and you lean. So
I've never heard that.
Yes, I've been corrected on many things, and I heard you the other day talk about pecan versus pecan.
Yes.
And I did had people come in the shop and say, well, pecan's what you use, honey, when you don't have indoor plumbing.
That's exactly right. That's what someone texted me afterwards. I keep my pecan under the bed.
Yes.
So you were concerned whether the Newhouse chocolates would be received well in, let's face it, Fairhope, Alabama, in the Deep South. What happened?
I was more concerned about the price.
Yeah.
These are pricey. One piece costs you between $2 and $3.
Yeah.
People, if you can get them to try it, they will love it and they see the value immediately. When you buy a popular candy bar at a store, unnamed, and you look at the chocolate. I'm not talking about the total content. So let's not talk about the nougatine or the nougat or the nuts or the coconut or whatever else is in that. We're just looking at the chocolate on top. You are looking at a product which contains approximately 11% chocolate.
Okay.
When you eat any of my chocolate, you are getting a minimum of 35% chocolate, 33 to 35%, which is couverture chocolate. So what came from that cacao pod is going to be a minimum of 35%, 33, 35%. And it's called couverture chocolate. And it's expensive. And it's expensive for so many reasons. But good chocolate costs money. And I thought it was really funny what Billy said about his bacon.
His bacon.
About his bacon. And I have told people this. I laughed out loud when I heard that episode because I laughed out loud. He said, stop complaining about the price. Basically. He did not say that exactly. Sorry, Billy. I know you didn't say that exactly. But basically it was, this is adult bacon.
That's exactly. I thought you were leading there. This is adult bacon. You don't cook this for the kids and leave it on the counter.
Exactly. So buy your fun size pack of whatever you want at the store and leave that out for the children and then hide in the closet at night and eat this yourself.
So this is not something you drop into a Halloween bag as kids come trick-or-treating down the street at $2.50 a pop.
Exactly. But I promise you what will happen the first time you buy my chocolates, you're going to overeat on these and you're going to feel it. Your heart rate's going to go up. You are going to feel like you've drank too much coffee. And you're going to take a step back from that and say, wow, what happened?
What is this stuff? Yeah.
What happened is you got real chocolate. And the next time you eat it, you're going to, instead of eating 10, you're going to eat 5.
Yeah.
And the next time you eat it, you're going to set out a beautiful glass of Oregon Pinot. You're going to set out a lovely shot of your favorite scotch, or you're going to draw your favorite espresso coffee. And you're going to sit down and you're going to light a candle and you're going to put it in your mouth and you're going to let it fall apart from the warmth of your mouth. And you're going to close your eyes and you're going to go somewhere special. And then you're going to say, wow, I only paid $2.50 for that experience.
I tell you, I'm salivating. I'm loving the way you're telling the story about this product. I think it's fascinating. And I love the way you say, well, when you first get into it, you're going to eat 10, but in time you're going to eat 1 and really savor it in a whole different way, just like that glass of wine.
Yes, you are.
And I want to know who your customer is. Do they come in immediately after a meal and have a piece of chocolate, or do they buy 8 or 10 pieces and bring it home with them? Who is your customer?
It's both. We have people who come by and they get a piece of chocolate to finish out their meal. And those people come back at Christmas and Mother's Day. When they have a party, they come back. They come back for their parents' birthday presents. What in the world do you get grandparents for Christmas? Yeah. Are you going to get them a tchotchke and a duster?
Right.
You could get a feather duster and a curio cabinet of tchotchkes, or you can give them something like this, and I promise you, they won't have to store it anywhere. They're going to have this amazing adventure, and they're going to remember this forever because these chocolates are so good.
Yeah.
And they're world class. The chocolate I use from Switzerland for my own confections actually is an award-winning chocolate. I've been through several brands. We've had a lot of interruptions in our the flow of chocolate. Where chocolate comes from, primarily Ghana and the Ivory Coast, about 77 to 80% of chocolate to 83% of chocolate comes from Africa. About 17% of chocolate comes from the New World. It only goes from 0 to 20 on the longitude and latitude.
I see.
Longitude, yeah. Is it negative 20 to 20?
Right.
Global warming has really affected chocolate. It takes about 5 years for a cacao tree to come to maturity. You're talking about people who the entire family work this farm, and they don't make enough to buy a candy bar in a day. So waiting 3 to 5 years for yield. You also have competing crops. You have things like vanilla.
Yeah.
Look at Madagascar. The Madagascar vanilla, my favorite vanilla, hands down. We use all real Madagascar vanilla in our shop for our confections and for our gelatos. We make all of our gelatos. We make all of our sorbets, and we use real ingredients. And it's expensive, and I'm sorry. It's the philosophy of the shop. And the thing is, you can get cheap stuff all over the place. If you want something cheap, please do try mine. It's only $3. It's not going to kill you to come in and buy a piece of chocolate.
Right.
Once you get it, it's less than a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's way less than a pack of cigarettes.
Do you have to teach people to think this way?
Yes.
It's an uphill battle?
Yes. And I teach every employee a spiel when they come in.
Yeah. Let's hear that spiel. We're going to go to break, and I'm on pins and needles, and it's about time we try another piece of this glorious chocolate that I'm looking at in front of me. I want to hear the spiel when we come back from break. We're going to move into break. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston in the studio today with Chef Jule. She's the owner and executive chef at Fairhope Chocolate. We'll be right back.
Think about how people really see you. The kid at the drive-thru just sees a coffee drinker.
Please go forward.
Your local barista sees the person who loves a smiley face in their latte.
See you next time.
It's kind of the same way with insurance. Other insurance companies just see a customer, but a State Farm agent sees more. They see you as a neighbor. Your State Farm agent is here to get to know who you really are, so they can help life go right.
Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, in Mobile at 666-1616.
Hey, this is Cam. Thanks for listening, and I hope you're really enjoying the podcast. Do me a favor and search for Cam Marston on your social media outlets and like us or follow us or whatever is the right thing to do. Also, if you know others who'd benefit from the podcast, please forward it on to them and encourage them to listen. If you're so inclined, we'd love your rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Those ratings matter. Finally, don't be a stranger. Email me with your comments, your feedback, your thoughts, your show ideas, whatever. Cam, C-A-M, at cammarston.com. I'd love to hear from you. Again, thank you very much for listening. Now, back to the show. Chef Jule is in the studio with me. She is the owner and executive chef at Fairhope Chocolate. You might can hear me smacking on something during the break. I had a piece of caramel, and I tell you, folks, it's fantastic. Chef, tell me what I'm eating with the caramel. Tell me a little bit about it. I only had a very small piece, and I think the whole piece would be almost too much. But tell me what I'm tasting on this little caramel piece.
Our caramel is made in a giant copper pot.
Yeah.
Right there in our 200 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a little bit of nerves of steel to make it the way we do, because I have a philosophy of the caramel. First of all, you have to use the finest quality ingredients. Secondly, I use some sugars that are not so sweet on the palate. So one thing you might have noticed is, yes, caramel is very sweet. There's no question about that. But I try to balance the sweetness of it a little bit by using a sugar that is not as sweet as regular granulated sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So we do use granulated sugar, but we also use a sugar that is not granulated sugar.
Yeah.
And that helps to balance the overwhelming sweetness. But the majority of flavor that you're getting is from that copper pot. And a copper pot gets very, very hot on the outsides of the pot over an open flame. And the flames will lick the pot and it will burn little areas of the caramel. And when I say it takes nerves of steel, it really does, because I wait literally to the second that it's about to burn. And we try not to stir it. So when you taste our caramel, you get a layering. The very center of the liquid in the pot does not get any of that licking of the flame. Mm-hmm. The next layer is going to brown a little bit more than the center. And the outside layer might even get a few flecks of burn. Now, we all know, anyone in culinary, if it burns, you have to throw it out, period. There are very few, maybe some blackened dishes, but truly burning is the one thing where you need to put it in the trash.
Yeah.
So we wait until the last moment. Just that last moment. And I've taught people this before, and they're all, oh, can I put the cream in yet? Nope, not yet. Oh, please. I mean, people sweating, people getting nervous about this. And the copper pot is wonderful at balancing the acidity, helping the sugar crystals to fall apart. But the copper pot also allows for that layering of flavor. Once you add the cream and the butter, then this is the dry method of caramel making, by the way. There are several methods. At home, I highly recommend that you do the wet method. You can look this up on the internet because you're not as likely to burn yourself. We're talking about getting something to 350 degrees. The pot is probably 500-600 degrees.
Now, I've taken a tour through a place called Ethel M's in Las Vegas. And Ethel was apparently one of the Hershey parents, Hershey family's mother or something like that. Or maybe it was M&M Mars, Ethel Mars, something like that. But in the tour, they showed these ladies standing over these enormous copper pots. And they said, there's no way to teach this. It's all feel.
It is
and
all
these ladies
feel.
have a sense of what needs to happen in those copper pots. But it's nothing that can be written down. It's all experience.
It's not even a temperature, because sometimes I have to pull it off 30 degrees before I normally do. So it's a color, it's a feel, and it's really having nerves of steel.
Yeah.
And I'd show you my arms, but we won't go there. It's also a lot of trial and error, and you burn yourself a lot. And that's why I recommend, please, if you're at home, just come get my caramel or use the wet method to make caramel, because you will burn yourself.
Not just burn the product, but your arms as well.
Yes, you'll burn the product a few times, and then you're going to burn yourself as well. And you'll throw it into the trash can, and it'll burn a hole through the bottom of the trash can because it's so hot.
You don't know what. I can't hardly believe that we're talking about chocolates and confections when we're talking about burning arms and throwing things away. This is the product. This is the process.
But this is more so than anything else in cooking. Candy making is, yes, you have thermometers, and you've got to abide by those thermometers, and you have equipment, and you need to set the equipment correctly. And there's tempering chocolate is extremely precise. But if it's more humid one day, you gotta make and believe me, it's our biggest challenge here is dealing with heat and humidity. It is our biggest challenge, and it is constant.
So is it reasonable to suggest that when you're making chocolate, you have to check the weather to know exactly how to proceed about it? Or you can look at the product as it's being made and say it's reacting this way due to it being 95% humidity today.
Yeah, and it just, if your chocolate isn't in temper, it won't set up. So you can pour out a small amount and check it.
Yeah.
If it's still liquid after 2 minutes, you may have to make cake.
You have to pivot, as the expression is these days.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that is our biggest challenge is dealing with the weather. And I have not quite cracked that in terms of mailing.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm working on it. Bear in there with me because I really do want to get the internet business going and expand that way. But it is, I just don't want a product. If your chocolate, you get your chocolate and it's covered with little white dots. It looks like somebody took a little paintbrush and covered it with white dots. That's humidity. It's still delicious. It's fine to eat.
Yes.
It just means the sugar, little grains of sugar rose to the surface because sugar loves water. So if it's nice and humid, but you can't fix that. You make cake.
Well, I remember my first job out of college was with Nestle Brands food service company, and we learned about what they called, I think, Blooms.
Bloom, yes.
And we would sell these giant 8-pound chocolate bars, huge, which probably had, based on what I'm learning now, 11% chocolate in them. And, I mean, they were huge, and they were kind of gag gifts that we'd give to people.
Yes.
But they would get Blooms all over them.
Yes. And it's hard to say. Chocolate has changed over the years as chocolate's become more expensive, as we've had global warming, as we've had regional disputes, wars in areas where chocolate is grown, as we've had competing crops, which have taken over areas of chocolate. Chocolate's fussy. It doesn't really like to be cultivated. If you plant corn, you plant it in a row. You put it out in a field, and when it's time to harvest that corn, you send out your corn picking machine. Chocolate likes to kind of randomly plop down with diffuse lighting underneath a rainforest canopy. The fruit it doesn't really have a season. So one pod may be ripe and the next pod won't be ripe for a couple of months. And it's a very hands-on kind of thing.
I want to interrupt you here real quick. Folks, we are going to continue this conversation after this segment is complete in the podcast version. If you're listening to this broadcast on the radio, find the podcast. She and I are going to continue to talk about this as well as sample these chocolates that are in front of me. So go to what'sworkingcam.com, find the podcast, and you can listen to the tail end of this conversation. However, Chef Jule, we're coming up to the third break here, or the end of the third segment, and I want you to plant the idea in the listener of after the Thanksgiving meal, later that afternoon, they should have a nice glass of wine paired with the chocolate. Now, and between now and then, they can come into your store and pick something up that will be truly a celebration and a treat around their Thanksgiving table for their family, if that's what they do. All right, there's your entree. What should that look like? Give some people some things to think about.
I've really thought about this, and this is something I do at my own home. And I think that if you eat your Thanksgiving around 11 or 12, around 3 or 4, you're going to feel that little wanting something special for the holidays. And I highly suggest you could have your glass of wine, but you could also do a coffee, or you could do a really nice, like a IPA, or you could do a lager, or one of my absolute favorite things to do is to do a whiskey. And I would, if you have a large crowd, you can look up the different regions of Scotland, and you can go for something from extremely peaty, the Macallans that we talked about before, that's excellent. But you can go ahead and do kind of like a whiskey pairing. And the more peatier ones are better with the dark chocolates. The less peaty ones, the Macallan's great. It's a really good, if you just want to buy one bottle, that's a great one to buy, either the 12 or 15. You can pair it with just about anything.
If I propose to you, it's not intentional. It's just what's going to come out after you talking to me this way. All right.
Yes.
So this is the way that you're really stirring emotions in me right now about pairing chocolate with peated scotch. Please continue.
Yeah. So this is something my husband loves. And again, I really love the pralines with it as well, like our southern pralines. I love those. Remember, if I say pralines, it's the southern confection. If I say praline, it's a bonbon. But not everyone likes the peat, so I would say get something from like a Balvenie to a Macallan to a
Bunnahabhain.
I don't know Bunnahabhain.
Oh yeah, it's an island whiskey, but not real peaty. It's got the flavors of the ocean in it, but not a lot of peat.
I'm gonna mess this up. Ardbeg. Yeah. Okay. That one is really nice with one of our nice dark chocolates. So don't have a lot of time? Swing by, pick up an already made box. Have a lot of time? Come by, select your own. We sell them by the piece or in gift sets. And we'll help you. You can also make an appointment if you really want. You can make an appointment with me.
Tell them how to find you, and we're going to go into break.
You can find me, stay up on our Facebook page.
Yeah.
Our Facebook page on Fairhope Chocolate. We are moving into our larger facility on Main Street. On Fairhope Avenue in downtown Fairhope. We are in Fairhope Avenue. We will either be at the French Quarter or at our Main Street, Fairhope Avenue location, the old Andres building. And we might have both open. We are in a transition right now. It is definitely my wish that we are completely open and running by Thanksgiving.
So find them online at Facebook page Fairhope Chocolate. From there, you can learn where they're operating out of. You can call and set an appointment with them to get some scotch to pair with your wine, or better yet, get some chocolate to pair with your wine, or better yet, your Scotch whiskey for about 3 o'clock Thursday afternoon, Thanksgiving Day. Chef Jule, thank you for your time. We're going to continue this conversation on the podcast, but thank you for coming in. Can't wait for this to broadcast. And folks, if you're interested in where this is going to go, download the podcast and we'll talk about more of these chocolates. You're listening to What's Working. I'll be right back with final comments for the radio. This is Cam Marston with Cajun Mike of E3 Termite and Pest Control. Cajun Mike, houses on pilings can have termites eat their way up inside the piling and enter the house. The homeowner never knows about it, but your company offers protection. Tell me about that.
Yeah, Cam. Basically, what we have designed is a program, and what we do is we will actually drill to the center of the pilings and put a product in the center that will stop the termites from coming up into the home.
Stucco exteriors as well?
Correct.
How can people find you, Cajun Mike?
They can find me at e3pest.com.
That's the letter E, the number 3, pest.com.
Hey, this is Scott Tyndall, and when I'm not playing around in the blockchain with digital horses or trying to figure out what's going on with Disney, I'm listening to What's Working with Cam Marston. Now back to the show.
Special thanks to Chef Jule. Folks, she came prepared with an extraordinary amount of delicious chocolate, and she set it all up on the table, and we didn't eat half of it. We didn't taste half of it. There are plenty of them in there that we didn't touch on. And she gave it all to me, and I brought it home, and I gave it to my wife, and the pralines were fantastic. I've got to tell you that. The pralines were fantastic, and the idea of 3 hours after Thanksgiving dinner, everybody in your family taking a nice piece of Chef Jule's gourmet chocolate and pairing it with your favorite drink, man, I'm smitten with the idea. Hopefully by the time next week on this show, we're going to do a replay leading into Thanksgiving, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. But the week after that, if I can remember, I'll let you know how that pairing went. It's so good, though. It really is. And it's a wonderful way, like I said, to learn stuff. If you're out and about and you want to get something special and do something unique, just drop by that store, Fairhope Chocolates. Find them on Facebook, figure out where they are, drop by, pick something up, do something. At least it would be different in my family, in my traditions, to offer everybody in my family something and then pair it with their own favorite drink. I love this stuff. And heck, as we lead into the holidays, it's time for some hedonistic content. And maybe we got some more coming. That's it for this week. Special thanks to John Thompson, show's producer. Find me on Facebook. Find me on all the social media. We'll have another show next week. Have a super week, everybody. And since next week is a replay, I hope you'll have an absolutely delightful Thanksgiving. All right, folks. You're the podcast listeners, and we don't have the FCC having its thumb on what it is that we say and do, not as if we're going to do anything crazy, but it's a more casual conversation that does not have to be interrupted due to giving our advertisers time. And Chef Jule and I are going to go through some of these chocolates now and talk about some of the varieties here. If you're a chocolate lover, this may be interest to you. If you're curious about chocolate, that's probably the best listener. This will be fun. Go ahead, Chef. Tell me what we can try next and give me the story behind it.
Well, we have already sampled today the rondos. So we started off with the white. We went to a ruby white, sweet, creamy, milky vanilla. We went to a ruby, which is very similar to the white, but you're bringing in more fruit tones. Right. It's also got that sweetness. You're bringing in that berry, that red berry, that strawberry. Again, that's from the ground, not from an additive. We went to the milk chocolate rondo. Rondo is just a little coin of chocolate. We use those. We get them in. They're already tempered, and they're used to melt down and make other confections with. The caramel, you're going to start getting caramel overtones. You're going to get a little more toasty. You're going to get a little more nutty in there. And then we moved on to the dark chocolate. So we've gone from a 33% up to now a 64% dark chocolate. Dark chocolate, milk chocolate is dark chocolate with milk solids. Dark chocolate obviously does not have the milk solids. So now you're getting into more earthier flavors, more a slight hint of bitterness. Now, bitterness is a wonderful flavor. Too much bitter is not good. But, you think about what you love about coffee, what you love about maybe scotch, what you love about
tannins in wine. Yeah,
tannins in wine. Thank you. And you really are, those flavors just, it's so funny. I always compare these to human emotions. It is really nice to be happy, but what kind of life would we have if we weren't able to feel a full range of human emotions?
Oh, I love it.
Anger, sadness.
Contrasting emotions make each one special.
Make each one special. And for me, dark chocolate has those contrasting emotions in it. So some days you might want to, some days you're happy, some days you're sad, but the complexity of human life to me is found in the dark chocolate. And so most people, when we're trying to get people to start tasting chocolate, I do not recommend, I know that, like when I listened to your McAllen podcast, he talked about, well, I like people to start somewhere with scotch, so I don't mind if they buy a lesser brand of scotch in order to start working up to us. I actually think that cheap chocolate will not open that gate for you, because a lot of people, I hear this all the time, I hate chocolate. It tastes like a candle. Well, it tastes like a candle because it actually probably has candle in it. It has wax in it. We talked a little bit about bloom. When you put paraffin, edible paraffin in chocolate, it keeps it from blooming. It keeps the sugar from rising to the top. It keeps the fat in the crystal formation where it's supposed to be shiny and pretty and snap and dry. Humidity messes with all of that. Mm-hmm. So the bigger companies have found a way to add these things to hold chocolate and keep the price down. But I suggest that you come in instead, if you don't like chocolate or if you're just entering this market, let's start with some happiness. Let's start with the whites and the rubies and the milk chocolates, and you will work up to the darker chocolates.
So let me ask you a question. When you get into, let's say, wines, when you get into what I've learned about scotches, there's entry-level things, and then as your palate refines itself, you begin to kind of taste the subtleties and move a different direction. For example, the most the Scotch drinkers that I know that are truly appreciative of it tend to have a great respect for a peaty Scotch.
Yes.
And they have a respect for a non-peaty Scotch. The wine drinkers are appreciative of a high tannin wine versus you and I were talking about a Sauvignon Blanc, which has a different flavor to it. They really have an appreciation in these things. My question on the chocolate is, once you find somebody who has an appreciation for the chocolate, do they no longer buy the pralines and things with nuts in them? Do they no longer buy the mixes and instead want to go for the single pure chocolate pieces that are just the essence, the most simple essence of the chocolate itself?
No, absolutely not. People add to their repertoire, not subtract from it. And I will tell you, I need to send this to you. I didn't bring it today. My favorite piece. It's a caprice. It's a triangle of, they call it nougatine. It's nougat. And it is filled with vanilla cream, and it's dipped in dark chocolate. It is the simplest of simple.
Mm-hmm.
It is my absolute favorite piece. I could eat it. I could eat one of those I may actually. Actually, I might eat this every single day of my life. But
you're your own inventory problem, aren't you?
Yes, I am my own inventory problem. But I will say there are days, I actually don't eat it every day, but there are days I go in there and I really want something exotic and fun, or maybe I want peanut butter. I love peanut butter. We have great peanut butter cups, wonderful peanut butter cups at our store. Or maybe I just want caramel. And I think that under stress, like the trend in chocolate right now, there's been a trend back to comfort.
Oh, yeah. We've heard that in a lot of our interviews with guests post-pandemic or during the pandemic, and is go back to the familiar and comfortable. We
cannot keep in stock our caramels and our pecan caramel delights.
Really?
So
the exotics and the things that you're spending a lot of time on aren't as appreciated right now as people just want to go back to what's comfortable.
I would say that is been our experience when you read about chocolate. It's been the experience of chocolate around the country and around the globe.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is we get people in there all the time who say to me, do you I want something with tahini, or do you have something with something exotic, maybe za'atar or something, some exotic things. And I used to have one with tahini. It never sold. After they asked me if I had one with tahini, they'd say, "Can I have a piece of caramel?"
Yeah.
So I think that people ask for things many times because it's exciting. But when it comes down to only picking one piece, they tend to go back. Like the number one selling piece for New House in the world is the Manon Noir, and it's just a mousse. Here, let's try this. This is a Manon Noir. We're kind of skipping around. We shouldn't be doing this. We should be starting with the whites, but I think it's time to go off the script here. This is the number one selling piece for this company. It's called
let me try to describe what I'm looking at here. It is I'm going to call it a bubble, a half of a bubble, and it's got some chocolate lines on the top. It's wrapped in chocolate, and in the center is what appears to be a dark, creamy, chocolate-ish something.
Yeah, it's like a chocolate mousse inside.
And it's called a what again?
Manon Noir.
And it's made by New House, this brand that you carry, unique brand, elite brand out of Belgium.
And I'll let you tell me, think very simple. Think about what you might be getting from this. This is their number one selling piece. And if you notice, it's not super complex. It's not exotic. It's just amazing.
It is just amazing.
It's just amazing. It is. You have the snap of the outside chocolate.
Mm-hmm. The texture changes are fantastic.
This is probably either a Criollo or a Trinitario chocolate bean. They don't use a lot of the Forastero, which is there are three beans, and the Criollo. Some call it Criollo. There's a double L in it, and depending on where you are in this world, they might pronounce that as a Y.
Right.
But the Criollo is a very finicky, low yield, fabulous bean. And then the usually from Madagascar. I love the Madagascar products.
Right.
Very expensive. And I must say too, when we're talking about these beans, part of the reason that chocolate is so expensive is that, like I said, you don't line it up like corn.
Right.
It does better if it's kind of grown naturally where it is, although they do plant trees. They are the pods come in ripe at different times, so you have to hand check the pods.
I see.
People come out with a machete, they cut off the pod, they put it in a basket, which they hand carry out of the rainforest. They need to be fermented, pulled apart, all by hand, fermented, dried. Then they're put into, they're usually checked by an inspector. It's really cool. They cut them in half. They have this little, they put them on this board and they put this like, it's like a guillotine, and they cut them all in half.
Right.
Inside each little tiny bean is a full tree that's just coiled up inside. You could look at it. It looks like a little tiny animated tree in there. There's a full tree inside each bean.
No kidding.
Yeah, they're really cool looking. It's put into a big, burlap sack,
Yeah.
loaded onto a ship. When you look at where Ghana and Ivory Coast is, it's so easy to take a ship and go right up maybe the Rhine.
Yeah.
You can just go right up the Rhine. It kind of comes up around the Horn of Africa, goes into Europe, goes right up the Rhine, which is part of the reason that the latitude is perfect, but it's also like being able to get chocolate to Europe for processing. So you would call that an Ivory Coast origin. Let's say it goes to Switzerland or Belgium, then it's going to be either Swiss processed or Belgian processed or French processed. And then through a series of processing, like breaking apart the bean and rendering the fat, and they do this thing called winnowing, where they get they kind of toast it and they get the outside shell off, and they're like kind of like, I almost think of it when you see it done like removing the skin off a hazelnut. Mm-hmm. They take those little skins off them, and then they're going to pull them apart, and they can mix like a nice wine, which is a blend,
Yeah.
or they can do a single origin. Don't shy away from blends. They're amazing. Mm-hmm. Some of the best chocolate I've ever had is a blend. The Forastero chocolate, which is the highest, the most robust. It's delicious. It doesn't have the best flavor, but it's the third tier of chocolate.
Right.
Those will go into the larger, really large companies. That will be your cheaper chocolate.
Yeah. That's what you're going to get in your Halloween bag.
Exactly. And then you have the other two chocolates that will be made into the fine bonbons. Very expensive.
Yeah.
Very labor intensive.
When you buy it, are you buying the beans? Tell me what you're getting.
I'm buying the rondos.
Okay.
At some point, I simply have not had space. It takes a lot of space. You have to put things out on racks, and you have to grind them, and you have to roast them and grind them, and it just takes a lot of room. I haven't had the room to do it. However, in the future, maybe in a couple of years, I would like to do one bean to bar.
Just to see what it's like.
Just to see what it's like. Plus, I'd love to have a bean to bar class, because that's a lot of fun. You can get people to actually grind up their beans and add their percentage of cocoa fat and cocoa butter and whatnot.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Let's try one more.
Okay. So back in 2017, 2018, this was called the World's Best Truffle by Bloomberg Report. It's got a buttercream center, kind of a ganache buttercream center.
It's, again, a bubble shape. That's my term. I'm sure. What is this shape? There's got to be an official term for this shape.
Just a brown bonbon.
Brown bonbon.
Round
It's got a powder on the outside of the chocolate shell.
Cocoa powder.
Cocoa powder on the outside of the chocolate shell. And it tastes like... so good. And this was the best one according to Bloomberg.
Mm-hmm. They did rank the top 10 truffles in the world. Mm-hmm. There's a little confusion. This truffle, a chocolate truffle, was rounded and formed to look like a mushroom truffle that you find in the wild.
Yeah.
But they're very different. A lot of people think that they're going to be getting like a covered truffle with chocolate or something. It's not. It's only the resemblance.
It's just meant to look like it. Yeah.
And you can really, as opposed to the Man Noir, you can really get the butter out of this one. This one has a lot of butter in it.
Now, one of them you told me that I'm looking at, that was fantastic, by the way. But I've got to ask you about the one that you said had lavender on the top.
Yes, this is violets, actually.
Violets.
Yes. This is called the Violetta. The Violetta is a dark chocolate ganache with the oil from French violet petals.
Yeah.
It's covered with dark chocolate. All of these dark chocolate that you see are above 50%, by the way, all of them. That just means that the total content of the product, you have to add sugar, you have to have other things to the chocolate that, like with milk chocolate, you're going to add milk solids, you're going to add in cocoa butter, you're going to add in sugar, you might add in vanilla or other flavorings depending on what you're making. So, but all of these are at least 50%. And I want to show you, I mean, how big would you say that is? Maybe three?
The size of a quarter. It's the width of a quarter.
Yeah.
And it's got these blue violet.
French violet petals that have been
on
crystallized.
The top. Crystallized. Yeah.
Oh, you're in for such a treat. This is such a good piece. By the way, I've given you a whole box of these to take home, exactly what we're eating here.
Oh, my Lord.
So you can repeat this at home. But again, don't share with kids. Hide in the closet.
Yeah. I do keep some chocolate in the closet as it is. Oh, that has more of a crunch to it.
Yes, that's the crystallized.
That's the crystallized violet petals.
Crystallized violet petals, yeah.
Boy, that's good.
Well, thank you. You should be getting a nice essence of violet.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yes. This is such an indulgence. Thank you so much for bringing this in. We're in the podcast version of the show. Last pitch. Tell people where to find you. Tell people what to expect when they come into your store. What kind of attitude? I guess it's an attitude of discovery. If they think, well, I like a Hershey's bar, this is not the same gig.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, it is absolutely not the same at all. This is a totally different experience. You can find us in downtown Fairhope.
Right.
And again, keep looking at our Facebook page.
Facebook page is Fairhope Chocolates.
Fairhope Chocolate, yes. And when you come in, we're going to give you our spiel. You know, welcome to Fairhope Chocolate. In this shop, we offer Newhouse of Belgium and Fairhope in-house made. We offer Newhouse is a high-end line from Belgium. It's been around since 1857. They are the chocolatiers to the royalty of Belgium.
Yeah.
You're going to get a variety of white milk and dark. We are starting to do the ruby as well. They don't make any, but we make it. Our best sellers are going to be, if you want something local, I highly recommend our pralines. You did try our pralines.
Yes, I did, and it was delicious. My grandmother taught me how to eat pralines. God rest her soul. She's rolling over in her grave right now.
And we also have our pecan caramel delights, which is our caramel patties, 4 big pecan pieces from local Fairhope. And then we have either dark or milk, and we put sea salt or traditional. Yeah. I love sea salt on chocolate. I think it's fantastic, especially a sweet chocolate, because it helps to balance that. You can, there are no rights or wrongs when you get into quality chocolate. If you don't like dark chocolate, try one, but be true to yourself.
Right.
There's no liking white wine versus red wine does not make you a lesser person. Liking a latte versus an espresso does not make you a worse person. Only drinking IPAs and looking down on people who like a lager does not make you a worse person. Liking peat versus not liking peat in your scotch. These are you're going to have different sensors in your tongue and your mouth. There are super tasters. There are people who overly taste bitter. Don't be afraid to talk about your palate, what you want, and what you're looking for. Or buy a gift set or a sampler. We have we have a wine pairing gift set. We have a coffee pairing gift set. We have, of course, our own. You can order any amounts that you want of caramels and pralines. And again, we push it. We push it to the limit on these, on our caramel and our pralines to get a lot of color in there.
Find them online at Fairhope Chocolate on Facebook. And folks, this would be a glorious thing to do for your Thanksgiving meal. After 2-3 hours after the meal is closed, sit down and have a pairing and a tasting with your family and friends. I can promise you this will be going on in my household Thanksgiving afternoon. Jule, thank you so much. This has been fascinating.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
All right, folks. Check us out next week. Have a good week, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.